Right, I'm panicking because this mist looks amazing. I don't know if I can do it justice. I'm scrambling to get some compositions. This is a terrible way to start a video.
We're back.
Welcome to tonight's Lenscast podcast. We are talking photography. We are showing pictures.
So guys, welcome back to another Landscape Lenscast podcast with Paul Cunningham and Steve Stain, Louise Welcome and Dougie Milne. And we're back for a new season. This is our second season and we have a great guest to kick off the season, Ben Harvey. Now Ben, of course, is a professional photographer. So mainly we have, of course, the pleasure of featuring Ben Harvey's images tonight. And of course, Ben is from Sussex. Ben Harvey is a professional photographer and also a YouTube creator, and he specialises in capturing stunning images of architecture and landscapes, which we'll all see tonight. Of course, I'm looking forward to these ones. We'll be asking him all about his work, and also we'll have a good narrative through his images, and we'll talk through his images as well tonight. So, without further delay, Ben, thanks again for joining us on Landscape Lenscast podcast. First of all, just to see, how are you tonight?
Yeah, good. It's already been quite a long day. I'll probably get into the details, but Louise and I have already been up for a long time shooting the sunrise this morning, and we're going to be out again for the sunrise tomorrow. So it's already been a long day.
It will be equally so tomorrow.
So, as we ask everyone that comes on the show, but just with your photography, I've seen your images and I think they're absolutely excellent, exceptional. And I know you've been a professional photographer for a number of years now. Where did the desire to photograph and what does to come from, and what does a photography mean to you as a person?
Well, I've got two answers to how I got into it. If you go back to just after the millennium, I started architecture. So I'm a fully qualified architect. And right at the beginning of when you're studying architecture, when you're designing buildings, they make you put your designs into setting photography. So I had no choice but to take photographs to implement my designs visually, to print large and put up on a wall for critic by my tutors. So back then I was forced into photography. And I think because I love tech and gadgets, as Louise will tell you, whether or not it was, just general stuff, in 2002, I think I bought my first DSLR. And at the beginning, I think I just enjoyed the tech and the gadget side of things. But I think at that time, I was just shooting. I was letting the camera do all of the work. If I took a good photograph then, it wasn't because of me. It was because of the camera. I couldn't recreate anything that I did. If somebody who knew what they were doing looked at the photograph and said, "How did you do that?" I wouldn't have been able to answer that question at all. If you fast forward to about 2008, 2010, maybe, my wife's best friend, Layla, said, "I'm going to get married and you're going to take the photographs or there won't be any photographs." What a friend, huh? And I said, "Layla, you just need to get a professional photographer, seriously." And she was just sticking by a gun. She said, "Either you take the photographs or there won't be any photographs at all." And I just couldn't have that. And if you get to know me, then I either don't do something or I do it properly. So that at that point, most people would go on a photography course or something like that. I read the manual to my camera. That's how I actually figured out I've got a camera, treat it as a tool. I want to understand exactly how this thing works so that I can understand what decisions it's making and then figure out how to override it for creative decision making. And from that point, I was learning about the creativity, composition, exposure, all of the things that go into photography. I started off very technical because I wanted to understand how the camera works. Then after I overcame that and it was no longer a limitation, it's a bit like when you're first designing buildings, you've got to learn the computer software. And you design very boring buildings to start with because you say, "Oh, I don't know how to use the software. I can't do curves. I can't do this. I can't do that." It's the software. So if somebody says, "Well, here's a pen," the limitation is gone. So to start with, I thought I'd tackle this, understand how a camera works, and then after that, I can start to get a bit creative. So I would say my early photography was very regimented, and when I used to show the photographs, I would describe my photographs technically rather than the artistic idea behind them. And from that point onwards, as you've probably all been through the process, I started to upgrade my equipment, started to buy better tripods, better lighting. I went on a few courses how to understand off camera flash, especially since I was lined up to photograph her wedding. And to cut a long story short, they split up. That wedding never happened.
Oh no.
So, I joke every time I see her. I say, "You owe me a lot of money because you've given me this very expensive hobby now that I'm totally addicted to."
Good,
But
and of course, that's what you can see that in your work. So the passion comes through in abundance. Um, yeah, I mean, in regards to your passion in photography, when you started off doing YouTube, what got you into YouTube? Was it that thing where you seen the gap in the market, like a lot of photographers do, and see it's the only way to progress and sell images or sell workshops, or was it just something you wanted to try? How did you get into YouTube itself?
it's a good question. I did it without thinking why to start with. I think initially I was taking all these photographs, and you share them on social media, and people provide you with compliments or sometimes feedback. And if you take Beachy Head, for example, I've been there a couple of times this year already, and you take a photograph of the lighthouse, and people say, "Lovely photo, great sunset, beautiful colours, etc." And what they don't understand is how much of a slog it is to get down there. That never comes across in the photographs. So I thought, for landscape specifically, I think I need to tell the story that goes into these images, and sometimes the story is more interesting than the final image. If I go out and make a YouTube video, which up until I was just making them every now and then, but for the last 2 years, I've been making a video every 2 weeks, and that forces me to go out. That's the schedule that I'm quite comfortable with. I can hit that, and that's fine. It doesn't stress me out. I don't feel like I just have to make content to keep up with the schedule. I don't ever release something that I'm not entirely happy with. So, with that, I think I can tell people the story behind the image, and sometimes it's not about the photograph. It's about learning a new skill or just exploring new places. Sometimes I will tell a story or an idea. So at the moment, we've got bluebell season, and the example video that I sent you was about sunflower fields, and that video, which I called "Being Relevant," was just about. We're all photographers. If you look through our social media right now, it's just getting boring with bluebells and everything. Um, but we also want to go out there and enjoy the bluebells and take photographs of them, or whatever the season is. It's Christmas. If there's a storm, then you get loads of storm photographs. And it was just about how do we get out of this cycle, because the same things come around every year, and it's just about trying to be different. So I was just exploring the idea, everything, the grass is always greener on the other side. We're bored of what cycle we're in, and a lot of people on my YouTube videos, they comment and they say, "Oh, the landscapes you got in Sussex are beautiful. Where I am in New Zealand, it's boring." And I say, "What do you mean? Everybody thinks their own environment is boring, but it's just the grass is green on the other side." I would love to go to all of the places where all of my subscribers are from, scattered around the world, and I just say, "You're just used to your environment. It's Sussex is a beautiful place to photograph, but I could think of better places to be located." So so yeah, the question was, why did I get into YouTube? So it was fundamentally to tell the story behind the images, and secondly, it was to challenge myself, because I like the feedback you get. Some people are anonymous online and they give you very brutal feedback. The comments that are the truth hurt the most, because you think, yeah, I agree with him. I could have done better, or I made a bad decision that day. So it was really to challenge myself as well, because if I make a tutorial, they're probably the videos that get the most thanks, because you're teaching people. A lot of people go to YouTube to learn things. Some of my
I agree.
blogs, I'm just sharing a location and my experience, but they might walk away from that video and they haven't learned anything. They've just enjoyed a video for 10 minutes. Whereas the tutorials, I think people are very, very grateful for, because they say, that was really helpful. I've looked at loads of videos and this was really succinct and everything. I enjoy teaching people things, and tutorials. If you want to teach people a specific subject, then you have to know exactly what you're doing, and that makes me up my game. Because if I feel like I'm in a position to teach somebody this specific skill, I know if I put that out there and it gets 1,000 views, one of those people are going to know more than me. So I feel like I have to up my game if I'm going to teach others. So it's about challenging myself as well.
Yeah, and that's what keeps us on our toes to improve our game in it. And I think in this getting nicely to brings us nice to the next question is I did notice on your site, like many photographers, but you offer one-to-one workshops. What does a one-to-one workshop give the I was going to say participant, or the mean the person, the customer? What does it give them?
So it's a new idea at the moment. I think I released a video. It was probably 2 or 3 videos ago. I've done one-to-one workshops with other photographers, but not on a paid basis. So it's a fresh idea, and so that part of my website is new. I've got a lot of experience in Sussex, so there are lots of landscape photographers scattered around England, but there aren't many in Sussex. Some of the photography workshops that are based in Sussex, and even the photo view book on Sussex, which hasn't been finished yet, is not from a local photographer. So I just think there are lots of really good photographers down here, but they just don't seem to be on YouTube, and they don't seem to be offering workshops. So I mean, there are a few people that do it, but I just saw that there is a gap in the market. I've never done photography on the basis that I need to make a career out of it, make money out of it, and that's why I'm terrible at marketing and selling prints and everything else. I'm just doing it. This is my hobby. I don't really want. If I do a workshop, I'm going to have to beg my wife to let me go out for an entire day, take care of the 3 kids, and I mean, it will be fun. I enjoy teaching people things, but they would get my experience of all of the local areas. And I share a lot on my YouTube videos, but I think some people much prefer hand holding. A video is good on YouTube that you can leave a comment and I'll get back to you, but there's no substitution for being there. And they ask you a question and you give them an answer straight away. Why are we going here? At this particular season or this particular tide, and I think some people really appreciate the one-to-one live tuition, even if they're very competent at photography. A long time ago, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I contacted Thomas Heaton, which most people know who he is. Before he ran workshops, I said, I'm visiting the Lake District for the first time ever. Would you mind give me a tour? I know you don't run workshops. And he just said, I appreciate you contacting me, but I just don't run workshops. But he looked at my work and my website and he said, you're very capable. You don't need my help. And I said, I'm after your local knowledge. That's why I would want to follow your YouTube channel. And it's that local knowledge that you're paying for, because you're going to travel somewhere, you're going to get the tides wrong, you're just going to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, and time is valuable. So it was just benefiting from somebody with local knowledge. That's it.
It's a good investment for anyone starting to learn photography. Is invest in the workshops. It's a huge thing. I've been on a few myself, and every single one I've enjoyed, and I've taken back something from it. Of course, we've talked about your photography and how you got into it, and also talked about YouTube, and also, of course, with your workshops where you are now. So,
Louise, please tell me that was you singing at the beginning.
Dear Lord, I've sung at you enough times, mate, for you to know that that was a tune, and what I do is not.
We've got Ben does. What was it? I've forgotten what your thing was, Louise. Ben does something in your video.
Ben does geek.
That's it.
I'm so pleased you didn't record that, Paul. That's a record.
Anyway, this is a jingle that's going to knock all the jingles out.
This
So
is worse,
here it
Ben.
goes.
Worse. Here
Here
we go.
goes this week's images.
Deep breath.
It's time for that part of the show on Landscape Lenscast podcast, where we all take a look at the images for this week from present and past. Yes, my friends, it's time for that part of the show here on Landscape Lenscast podcast, where we all take a look at the images for this week, from present and past. This week's images.
Ben, you did a really good Ben face there.
I kept my
And
cool.
to be fair, Steve and Dog are like this, because normally we're looking through our hands.
Yeah.
Well, so
Oh, yeah.
this is season 2. This is a mature podcast now, and I assume that the jingles, they're not going anywhere. We're sticking with it, and
We are.
they're bold.
We're
We're proud of it.
I don't think we've got a choice, to be honest.
I don't think Ben Does Geek's going to cut it on this.
So, guys, we'll go on to the first image, beautiful monochrome architect image, as Ben was talking about at the start of the podcast. So, Ben, can you just give us an introduction to this image? And
Yeah, so this falls under the genre. I'm aware that I've given you some architecture images for a landscape photography podcast, so hopefully this is this is
Right.
okay.
Well, class as
Um,
architect.
The reason that I've sent these across is because a lot of my YouTube following found me from my fine art photography, and if anybody listening and watching isn't familiar with this genre, it's called fine art architectural photography. And a lot of people in the comments, wherever you post these, will say, what makes this fine art? If you visit this building, it looks nothing like this. And
Okay.
so I wouldn't say I've either taken this photograph or I've captured this photograph. I have created this image. And in a genuine sense, if I show you the original, which in some of my videos in the editing process, I do show you, I have brought this into Photoshop and I've made probably about 50 selections of this image so that I can manipulate every single element of it, including the sky, all of those handrails underneath every single level, so that essentially I've got a blank canvas and it's a bit like colouring in or drawing something. And I can control. So I can confidently say, this is a unique image. Nobody on the planet has got this shot because I created it. The light will never fall on this building like this because I made it.
Yeah. So that's the point where you're actually using the art aspect as opposed to just taking a picture. You're actually being more creative and actually put your own touch onto that.
That's it. There's hours and hours of editing that goes into these. And some people wish that there was some sort of magic software. Yes, software is getting better and it can create selections of skies and everything, but nothing out there will read your mind and say, I'd really like to highlight this particular handrail or this part of the building and create a selection based upon that. So there's a lot of manual labor involved in the editing process, but it's very rewarding because every time you see the same building that's edited in this style, they're all different because I've created an impossible light on this building just by using selections and gradients, and there are lots of software out there, and there's actually quite a few different ways that you can do this, but that's why this falls into the category of fine art. It's not convert to black and white, increase contrast, because there is no contrast on this building. If you go there, the whole thing is pretty much just beige, it's concrete, white, and in order to control where the viewer's eye ends up, I make a decision. Okay, I want the light to be coming from the right-hand side, and I want the sky to be darker at the top and lighter at the bottom, and I want the building to be darker at the bottom and get lighter. And I can control where people's eye ends up just by creating the highest contrast points, the brightest part next to the darkest part, and then gradually kind of softening the edges so that always remains the most contrasty part. Now, when my most successful video When it went viral, and which is where I went from about 1,000 subscribers up to about 10,000 in about a month, which is pretty much when my YouTube channel took off. There are two people that created this genre of photography. There's Joel Chinchilla and Julianne Gasparado, I think is how you say her name. They created this genre. They wrote an ebook about it, and then I made a tutorial on it, totally credited them, and I put this video out there, and it's getting a lot of traction. And essentially, in my video, I told everybody you should just go and get their ebook, because it tells you over the course of 400 or 500 pages with example images the process in order to make these images. And I got an email from Joel, and before I opened it, I thought, uh-oh, I'm in trouble here. He's going to call me a fraud. He's going to tell me I've stolen his idea, I'm benefiting from it, and I really didn't benefit at all. I've got lots of subscribers, but essentially he said, my ebook is selling like mad, and I've asked everybody where they heard about me from, and they said Ben Harvey photography. And he hadn't heard of me at that point. And essentially he just said, thanks for paying my mortgage, essentially. My ebook is selling like mad. And the thing is, if you delve into this genre, and anybody that does this will know who Joel and Julia are, they are geniuses. But anybody trying to get into this genre, they watch their videos and they get lost, because they're so clever, they can't explain what they do in simple terms. And that is why my tutorial was successful. And if you look in the comments of my videos, like, this is amazing, and Joel's commented on it saying it's great tutorial as well. But they're just saying, please, can you make more tutorials, because I don't understand their videos and the way that they describe this process. So I wouldn't say I've dumbed it down. I would just say that I've made it clearer and how I understood it. And that was one of the success of this.
What would be the best conditions to go out and shoot something like this? Would there be a preferred condition? Would it be overcast? Would it be blue sky? What would there be? What would you advise to go out there, or any conditions even?
So you want to avoid direct sunlight, because that will in turn start to edit your image for you. Ideally, if you've got overcast conditions on your building, then you have a blank canvas. There'll be no contrast on it, and it's easier to manipulate. If this building here had direct sunlight on the right hand side, and you made the creative decision, I actually want the left hand side to be brighter, you've got a much more difficult job in the edit, and it would be a much harder process. So ideally, you've got overcast conditions, and Joel and Julia probably don't do sky swapping. This one has got a replacement sky in it, because it wasn't very interesting. Sometimes the clouds are a bit distracting, but if you can get it right in camera, use a 10 stop or a 16 stop filter, you get long exposure sky, dragging clouds, and therefore they're not distracting you away from the building where you want the viewer's attention. And overcast, but if you've got dragging clouds, maybe a bit of sunlight coming through the clouds, but predominantly cloudy scene.
Stunning image.
I actually come across that video, and I've seen the images you were creating, and I thought, this is just amazing, and it just made me want to go out and do this. And I haven't actually done this type of photography, and when I do, I was going to go straight back to that video and just follow it letter to the letter, and I just want to have a go. And if I created a third of the quality of that video, I'd be that image, I'd be so happy, because that is just it is.
Thank you. This sorry to cut across, Paul. This image was a part of a video that I made called "Fine Art on a Budget," because people look at this and they think, I bet you he's got a good camera. People that don't know actually So I made a video about doing this on a budget. So I was using my daughter's camera, which is Canon 100D and a kit lens. So the cheapest camera that I can get my hands on. And throughout the entire video, I was saying, I'm trying to prove a point here. This is the cheapest camera I can get my hands on. It's a few £100s. And then I showed everybody the workflow and how I edited it. And then I like to do a bit of time travel in my videos sometimes. So I flash back to me on the beach and I say, hi, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that edit. I've actually tricked you all. I took this photograph with a mobile phone. If you don't believe me, and then I go into the EXIF data in the Photoshop file, and it says iPhone XS, and then it's just proving a point even further. They thought I used a cheap DSLR, but I actually used my phone, and it just proved a point because it was all in the edit and the creative process of the decision making. It's nothing to do with the camera.
Yeah, that just shows the point of the tools. The camera's the only tool you've got in your hand, and the creativity comes to your mind and the work you put into the post processing. That's a good point. Just for the record, I did have a Canon 100 myself way back as a vlogging camera at the time. So I think they're not bad actually, these cameras. But very impressive what you've said there.
It's the smallest camera, which is why I bought it for my daughter. It's just
It is, yeah. It's very small. Very comfortable in hand. So we'll move on to the next one, and of course, there we go. Yeah, this one we were staring last night when we done a test for doing a podcast. So yeah, tell us more about this one, of course, Ben. And obviously, everything's pointing to this boy walking in the centre of the bridge here.
Yeah, this isn't a composite. This happened, and this is at Canary Wharf in that futuristic-looking tunnel. I don't know if you've seen that before or been down there. This was on a quiet Sunday morning. Security did come over to me and ask me what I was doing, and because it's quiet, they let me just carry on. This was actually taken 2016, I think. I've just got a batch of photographs. So this is taken on a 5D Mark II, and I've just got a pile of raw files that I've never got around to editing. But I've put some time aside this year to catch up with some editing. So I've edited this year, and my style and taste for fine art images has changed over the years since that fine art video that I was just describing. I think that came out in 2019 maybe. Since then I've been using some different software which has influenced how I edit the images, but I'm using Photoshop and a plugin called Artisan Pro, which was created by Joel, who created the genre. That guy's a genius. So he created his own software to streamline the process, because he spends days and weeks editing images. I've got a lot of patience to do this, and if you watch some of the videos, in this image I've selected maybe 50 items. So the handrail that goes on the left and the right, that's one selection. Every single kind of L-shaped metal beam that's around the side, they're individual selections, and it's very time consuming, but it's quite therapeutic. I've got a Wacom tablet and a stylus, and I just put some music on, and I think it's quite therapeutic actually. So that's when I want an easy task to do, because I've got photo editing, I've got a bit of selections, and I've got video editing to do. I think I want an easy time. I'll make some selections. This is not a composite, so this is original. And in terms of the editing, I've put like a gradient on the floor and the ceiling. The original of this is very flat. It almost looks like the interior of a Star Wars scene. Everything was white. I needed to create. That's it. I mean, it does look like that. But I needed to create some focus on the person walking down the tunnel, so darkened everything a lot. And there's a difference between a dark image and a contrasty image. Some people think when you're trying to do these fine art images, you need to kind of make the whole thing dark. But essentially, you just end up with an underexposed photograph. None of these are underexposed. They might be very dark and very moody, and you may have some true blacks in there. But after doing these images for years and years and years, I'm not afraid to use black in images anymore. As long as it's complemented with highlights, it's not a dark image. It doesn't look underexposed. It's contrasty. So I think when people start out, they're afraid to have deep shadows.
Yeah, you can see there's a lot of detail. You can see a lot of details. Nothing lost at all in that image from front to back, even to the point behind the little boy or boy. There is, it's not overexposed or anything. That is difficult to shoot when you got a lot of light coming from the other end to get that into focus, or try to get highlights on it. Certainly, you've got that well done, and so much detail in the shot. Of course, just speaking about that now. Dougie, yourself, we kind of spoke about this one last night, and you mentioned about the vignette at the top and the bottom, or the in this case
Gradient.
the grad pulling up and down, and you felt it was so important to this image to draw you right into the centre.
Certainly, yeah. Well, I think you mentioned that already, Ben. That, yeah, everything's pointing to the middle, and of course you're taking all the attention away from the top and bottom as well, where there's nothing happening. You know, so.
Yeah, I made very, very sure that this was a symmetrical image. So I'm looking at the edge of the frame where the handrail is, and I might have tweaked that a little bit in Photoshop. But when I was lining up with the tilt shift lens in the middle, I was making sure everything was perfect as much as possible. And then since the image is symmetrical, I wanted that person to be as close as possible. He's not perfectly in the middle, but it's not a composite. It's real life. On the basis that the image was symmetrical, I had to have all of the light in the middle of the shot, and everything was focused towards that. So a vignette or a gradient was the way of achieving that on this image.
Yeah,
I'm assuming when you take this image as well, you've got some sort of process in mind when you've actually taken the image, to achieve something like this.
Well, since there was almost 8 years between when I took the photograph and when I edited it, I took the photograph and then genuinely didn't think about it until I make the selections and then I kind of just mull it over. I think a lot of people take photographs and then turn them around quite quickly. I am so far behind on my editing, I remove all emotional attachment from my photographs. So I think if I were to offload the photographs that I took this morning, put them on into my Lightroom, I would keep more of them because I'm emotionally attached to them. I went out, got up at 4 o'clock this morning, and then I wouldn't want to get rid of as many of them. If I edit those in a week's time, no emotional attachment, and then I would be a bit more harsh a critique on my own work and say, actually, I've got 3 images that I think I'm going to share with the world. So it's similar with this. It was taken so long ago. Even if I don't edit it, I'm not emotionally attached to it anymore. I just scrap it. It's like it never existed. Because these take so long to edit, I think I'm happy for this image never to be edited if it's not good enough. But yeah, I make the selections and then have a coffee, and then I think, right, what do I want people to look at, and how am I going to achieve that? But sometimes, because as we all edit photographs, sometimes you go a bit too far. And with these fine art images, I tend to not go far enough. So I'll edit it and then walk away for a couple of days and then come back to it. And most of the time, they're not punchy enough. They're not contrasty enough. They don't have enough shadows and things. So it's the opposite to sometimes, when you over edit an image. Most of the time, these need a bit more punch when I come back to it.
Yeah. It's an image, and guys can probably all agree it's these first 2 images we've seen. They're really polished looking images. That's the best way I could put it. So
Ben,
Sorry.
question for you, my lovely. So when you're looking at these 3 images now, what do you take from this into your landscape? So your technique of this into your landscapes. Now, I appreciate we haven't seen the landscapes. And if you want to pause that and come back to that question later, because I'm happy to ask it. But I think what attracted me to your work originally was this stuff. I think this is sublime. But I see some of this in your landscape work.
Yeah, I've had similar people that I respect as well that have a similar feedback. They say, I've been following your images for years and years and years. I can see a real passion in your architectural photography. I say, well, it kind of makes sense. I'm a qualified architect. I design my own buildings, and I was photographing a building yesterday, and the client said, so why do you end up photographing the buildings? And I said, well, if I were to design a building and then kind of hire a photographer, they wouldn't see the building as I do because I designed it. I know some of the best bits of it, and they would see it completely different to me. So I felt like I wanted to be in complete control of the entire process from start to finish. So there's a benefit in me photographing my own projects as well. I think whether it's drawings, art, photographs of buildings themselves, I'm always looking for strong geometry and graphical images. When I'm watching programs like the Landscape Artist of the Year on Sky Arts and things like that, you'll get people doing portraits, and some of them will have very ethereal brushstrokes. And I'm always drawn to the people that are doing very, very graphical representations of people. So that
Yeah.
could you get some people, if any of you watch it, you'll get some person who is drawing an A1 portrait of a person with a fine line black pen, and that's all they're going to use. And I'm really attracted to that idea. And you obviously get different people with different styles and things, but when I'm looking at landscapes, buildings, drawings, art, and everything, I'm always looking for strong geometry and clean lines and things. So I do. Louise and I have been out many times on the South Downs, and essentially you're just looking for shapes created by the light on the land. And we're quite lucky here because we have what I describe as impossible land cutting through one another. Sometimes you just get overlapping depth, throw in a bit of mist in there. But for me, it's all about the geometry and how these things hit one another. Sometimes you might have a focal point with a windmill or a castle or something in the scene, but when I don't have something like that and I've cut the sky out and I'm filling the frame with land and light, I think sometimes the light creates the focal point. So yeah, I'm always looking for geometry and strong lines wherever possible.
Yeah,
That,
especially this image looking at this image just now we're looking at, and also the lines is all about lines in this image, and also the diagonal of the shape of the building where you've taken the photograph.
Can I ask
This
you,
one,
Ben, sorry, Ben, can I ask
no,
you,
go on. Sorry, go on. You're probably
the
saying
previous
something.
image there, did you see you used a tilt shift lens for that? Did I
I
misinterpret?
may have done. This again was taken many years ago. I only used a tilt shift lens. It doesn't make sense to use a tilt shift lens for this because I'm tilting the whole camera up.
Yeah,
There's nothing vertical about this that requires a tilt shift lens. It's just a very sharp lens. And if I am shooting a tall building, then I can make sure I don't get any keystoning by tilting the wide angle lens up. But I just really like using the lens. It's a sharp 24mm. You don't get too much distortion. All the lines are straight. And when you zoom in and make these selections, that's when you really discover whether your lens is sharp or not. I am genuinely zooming into 400, sometimes 600% to trace around these bricks. And when I've had cheaper, older lenses, it's just furry. And when you're in Photoshop and you're trying to create clean selections, it just doesn't work. So that's why I choose a prime lens, because I'm getting the sharpest possible result.
right.
The tilt shift, Dougie, was the one with the bloke coming in
Yeah, that's the one
into
I'm
the
talking
shot.
about. The previous one, I was just letting Ben talk.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just
I think I was. I think this might have been the same day. I just had one camera and one lens just to keep things simple. I think I was actually cycling around London to get these because they were so spaced out. I mean, this is nowhere near Canary Wharf, so I just thought I'll travel as light as possible. And yeah, this building doesn't look anything like this image. These highlights, they don't exist. I've created them to create some interest, because otherwise this building is an odd shape. It's not quite a pyramid. It doesn't really go anywhere. So I thought, okay, I'm going to create some interest with the highlights. But otherwise, yeah, this is my imagination. This doesn't look like that.
You find when
that's
when you're designing buildings, do you actually design them to look photogenic? Just out of interest, you know.
Yeah, I try my best.
Yeah.
I've never photographed one of my own buildings in this fine art style, because I don't know if it's positive representation of a building. It's arty, and I think I've seen some of these printed very large in offices in London on metal panels and things, and they look fantastic. But I don't think I design a lot of houses for residential clients, and I don't think that they would choose to have a very gritty looking image like this of their house or building.
Certainly, you've got a lot of insight because being an architecture yourself. and else when you're taking these images, so you're also looking for your own eyes that way. We're just going to cross over the divide from architecture more into urban landscape, let's call this one. It's a beautiful image. That's quite an interesting image, actually. So yeah, just tell us more about, and what we're looking at here. We're looking at like an upside down house and some kind of sort of docking yard or something.
So this is Brighton seafront. Whether you know your way around or not, that's the upside down house that was supposed to be temporary, but it's been there for a couple of years now, and you can go inside it. It's a tourist attraction, and this is part of a project. So I've got this image and the next one that are to do with the same idea. And the reason I've sent these to you is because when I was learning about photography, I was just following the rules. I was getting subscriptions to magazines. I was inspired, and I was just copying everybody else. And you get to a certain point and you want to develop your own style. And I think everybody searches out that project that you've done that people know you for, because the fine art images people know me for, but I didn't create the genre. I am following others that have done that. So I was searching out a project that I could call my own, and I've never seen anybody else do this. There are similar things out here. So this looks like a miniature Toy Town effect, which you can do with a lens baby, which is one of the twisting lenses that you can put on your camera. You can use a tilt shift lens, and you can also do it in Photoshop with varying success. But it was more than that, because the idea that this looks miniature is just playing with depth of field, because the only way you could achieve an image like this is using a macro lens if that building was tiny. But if you stare at this image long enough, you'll see, oh, they're real people, so something's going on here. How could you possibly achieve this? So I'm using a tilt shift lens for the opposite purpose of what it was designed for. The lens it has the ability to tilt so that you can have more depth of field. So if you are photographing a building from a slight angle, you can kind of tilt it towards the building and you get more depth of field. So I've just turned it kind of upside down, and I'm using it for the wrong purpose. But more importantly, the concept behind this project, which I called the bokeh project, was the idea that excited me. So up until I started this, the principle and the concept of bokeh was it's always in the background, or it's always in the foreground. It's never the subject. It can't be the subject because your subject is in focus. So I thought, what if we were to change the idea that bokeh's not just secondary, it's not in the background? What if that could be the focal point? So I thought about, so part one of the bokeh project, which is a blog on my website, I started to photograph famous landmarks where they were completely out of focus, but just recognizable. So if you take Big Ben and you make it out of focus enough, people would say that's a blurry photograph of Big Ben, and similar. So I did that, and I'd say it wasn't successful, but it was kind of the entry into a new idea, because essentially people can't handle it if there's nothing to focus on. If you just present somebody with an out of focus photograph, I think it would give them a headache long term. But it was just a stepping stone into, so how can I make bokeh the focal point of a project if everything's out of focus? So I started to just explore how I could control depth of field and out of focus areas. And the answer is using a tilt shift lens. Now, this allows me to control. I've made a video about this, but as we all know, everything the same distance from the camera is in focus. And there's nothing that science can do to avoid that. Even if you use the impossible lens that is a 400mm f1.2, if that existed, if two people were side by side next to each other, they would both be in focus. So I just wanted to find a way of overcoming this, and a tilt shift lens allows you to do that. I can look at this scene and say, I just want that upside down house in focus. That's it. And you can control that vertically or horizontally because the lens rotates. And that was the idea behind the project. It's just a new way of photographing a scene, not just if I take any other subject, for example, West Pier. If you want to create a unique shot of the West Pier, you can get it in different conditions. I've photographed it at low tide, in lightning. However, that's not a unique project. That's just a unique take on an existing scene. So I was just always seeking, and I think everybody always is. I want a unique project that nobody's ever done before, that people would say, "Oh, you did that, didn't you?" And so that's what this was, is an experiment that's still ongoing. But most recently, this was a wide angle. This is 24mm tilt shift, and I've started exploring this with longer focal lengths. But it's just being a bit more playful with well-known locations, just in a different style. That's it.
Yeah, it's yeah, you're right. I mean, most people just actually focus on the upside of the house and just let everything drop off in the background. Yeah, and with the bokeh, just makes the center of attention. It's really nice image. Steve, what's your take on this type of photography?
I think it's unbelievable. I think it's fantastic. I love the idea. I love that idea. What I like about this image is you're still searching around that image in the out of focused areas. It's still interesting. You still want to see what's in that image all the way through it, from front to back, from the left down and bottom corner right to the what's behind the house. And like you say, it's that got that miniature effect, but you know it's real. You know it's not a toy house or a toy figure. You know the real. Super. I'll absolutely love it. Love it. I love the idea. It's a fantastic idea.
I mean, you are asking yourself, aren't you? Is it real, or is it just a very detailed model? You know, that's the question.
Yeah,
You know straight away it's real, but it's in your mind saying, is it? Is it real?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's the light, the lighting and everything. It's just everything about it. It's superb.
yeah,
Very well
that is
thought
a
of.
lovely shot. That we'll go to the next one, guys. And this one, oh, this is the one. Yeah, the kind of Big Ben, of course, and it was very much you were just talking about that earlier. Ben talking about Big Ben being on focus, but you obviously got one side of it in focus there, and of course dropping off and using the bokeh again.
Not Big Ben, is it?
Yes.
Not Big Ben.
No, so this is the clock tower in Brighton,
Oh,
which
God almighty. I'll cut
Louise,
that.
I don't know if Louise
So
was,
start again.
I don't know if
Start again.
Louise was with me when
Ben.
I shot this, but it's just a really, people would look at this and think, I don't know how he did that. What is it? And I think I like it because everybody likes bokeh, out of focus light. However, how do you do that when all the lights are the same distance from the camera? And how is the clock in focus? But everything else is, I think they're just pretty images. But for me, it's the concept that is strong, because I've only ever done this with out of focus light. So it's mainly a winter project or late in the summer. And Christmas is an easy target. And if you watch the video, I actually came up with the idea at Christmas. I was trying to photograph my daughter in front of the Christmas tree, but the Christmas tree became out of focus so much that you couldn't even tell that it's a Christmas tree anymore. That's where this idea came from. I can put her next to the Christmas tree, but make the tree out of focus. And that's where the idea came from. After a bit, too much eggnog and that idea.
Yeah, I do like the colours in this image, and it's like coloured spots, like art. It's like it's been put there as opposed to like you've used the actual the cables coming down with the lights on it, of course. But it's almost like these are actually added to it. It's really nice. It's really nice. Louise.
Oh, I think you're muted. Self-muted.
Oh my goodness. This is well, to be fair. There's a whole commentary going on in the background here. So what you don't get when you look at this shot is that I've stood next to Ben trying to recreate this myself, with a battery that had gone, but that doesn't matter. And what you don't get is the fact that there are buses going underneath, and this is on a junction that is exceptionally busy. And this to me is a moment of serenity in absolute madness that's going on with shoppers and all kinds of things directly under that. And I think for me, I'm deeply jealous of this image, Ben, as you know. It doesn't necessarily portray all the stuff that's going on underneath, and it's just beautiful because of that serenity and the bokeh there. It just, not at all jealous.
Yeah, it's a beautiful one. I'd love to have that.
I'm jealous.
Well, okay, so this is how it goes, Ben. Ben, a couple of weeks ago, you borrowed my husband's 800mm lens. Can I borrow this sometime?
Yes, you may. Well, I've got tilt shift, and I've got lens baby that you can play about with as well.
Marvellous.
Yeah.
If he reneges on that, chaps, you know I'll be back to you complaining bitterly. Nice.
Yeah, that's a good one. And even if it's not Big Ben, it's still Big Ben. So, this is a lovely minimalist shot actually, and is this pretty much down Brighton area, Ben?
Yeah, this is known as Shoreham hot pipes. So these poles are to stop surfers and boats and things crashing into pipes that you can't see under the. You've got to get there at a specific tide to get the shot. It's a well documented location, and although so far the images that we've been sharing don't have water in it, I gravitate towards water for most of my photography whenever I can.
Yeah, I've noticed.
Because I live in Shoreham by Sea. It is close enough to the beach. And I work in Brighton, and there's lots to do there. So if I have my choice, I'm always by the sea. It's constantly changing. The reason that I put this in is because I entered this image along with some others into the Landscape Photography of the Year competition last year, and this one was shortlisted. So I'm particularly proud of this image, and managed to go to so considering it was my first entry, I should enter more competitions. Ended up getting shortlisted and going to the award ceremony, which was highlight of last year, and got to see Charlie Waite there, a couple of meters away from me, in front of me, filmed it. So it's a real experience, but it was kind of the highlight because it's the first time I'd entered. It's downhill from here, isn't it? However, this image is not highly commended, Louise. As I was stood there,
and Steve, to be fair, previous year.
Yeah, so must try harder.
Yeah, look, have you seen right over his shoulder? Steve does this, like, that's my book.
Yeah. Well, something on the shoulder, look.
Now, I have to say, Ben was brilliant because he actually stood there and videoed it. So I was in Slovenia, and the only reason that I could tell things was because Ben was sort of videoing it in the background, and they got kind of their version of this filming stuff, but it was just it was just great to be there, kind of vicariously, because Ben was there. But I think also you got a good sense of some of the shots, because I've entered before and got absolutely nothing. And on Saturday we're going up to go and have a look at Waterloo, I believe, at the shots, because hell, why not? But this one here, when he's taken me to see this, when I look at how he's done this, you think, crikey, because it is very specific with the tides. It's very specific with the light coming in. So on the sunrise there, don't say it's sunset, it's sunrise. But just, it's not an easy one to shoot, because if you get it a couple of degrees off, it looks blooming awful.
Oh yeah, you've got to get this symmetrical. It's got to be straight. I left the bird in. I think there was one other bird that I removed, which didn't stay long enough for the long exposure. But speaking of anybody being jealous, your two images that were highly commended, I was stood next to you when you took one of them.
That wasn't a highly commended, that was commended.
But
he was making the video in the opposite direction, so I tell you what, I'm going to take this. Click.
That makes it
actually, I watched that video of your video and of that night, and it's quite an interesting video, because I never managed to actually get down to London to even be there. I was actually on holiday, and I was gutted. I was absolutely gutted. So it was actually nice to see your video the year after. What actually goes on it. It's worth watching anyway.
Yeah, and I was in a room full of photographers. I was the only person filming it, the only person taking any photographs or anything, which is really weird considering the whole room was just photographers. And I just thought, I have to document it. I thought, I'm going to dress up in a suit. This might be the only time I get to go. I was stood next to Jamie Fielding, who was also highly commended. And I was messaging Louise in Slovenia, because I think there was a delay with the live stream. So I might have ruined the surprise for you, saying, you're commended, you're highly commended, before she found out on the live stream. But yeah, why not? It's an experience.
And if it's any consolation, I refused to watch it. And my husband insisted on having the live stream on his phone. And I wouldn't watch it. I was under a duvet like this, because I was so nervous. And then you said, "Oh," and I was like, "What?" In which case, I started watching it. Thanks, man.
Yeah,
and by the way, you scrub up quite well in a suit. Just to let you know that.
Thanks.
The only time I've ever seen you in a suit.
Yeah, that's a beautiful image. Thank you as well. This, oh wow, there's a lot of action in this one, of course. This is just this mere Brington again with the.
It is, yeah. Has everybody been to photograph the old West Pier?
Couple of.
I've seen it in photos, though, a lot of it. But I do,
Are these all the same bird, just repeated?
So essentially, this is a camera on a tripod, and I knew what I was going to do with it before I started taking the photographs. I think I rattled off about 60 photographs, and then I've brought them all into Photoshop and used blending layers to expose. I think it might have been a lighten layer or one of the layers which allows only the thing that has moved or changed to come through on the layer, and therefore you can see the actual flight path of some of the individual birds. I went there to photograph starlings, and I think some of the larger birds are actually seagulls or something else, whereas the larger swarm at the top, they were the starlings. I just wanted to create something different. I've photographed the West Pier so many times, and I just liked the idea of the multiplication of keep your camera still and then just have something moving, which people immediately say, what's this? How have you done this? What's going on? I like it, but I don't know what it is.
I've done that with windmills, wind turbines, but I've never done it with birds. You get the dandelion effect with the wind turbine. It's the novelty.
Yeah, I've seen some famous photographers. They've done this idea in subways. Where you've got a massive amount of human traffic. And as we all know, we've all done long exposures. The longer people stand still, so you occasionally get dark patches where people are waiting for trains, and then on the staircases, it just looks like ghosts and everything. And I've seen some long exposures of buildings being built in the MoMA Museum. I think it was in New York, and you think, hold on, this is a 10-year exposure. This is mental, and it's just that idea of. We've all taken long exposures, and I think the longest one I've ever done might be about 8 minutes or 10 minutes. But the idea of taking a photograph that's 10 years so that you can see all the sun paths. Anybody else know what I'm talking about? The images where you can see the sun paths in the sky throughout the seasons. It's
right,
incredible.
Okay. Oh, so I've got you. So it will be taking about 10. Yeah, that's what you mean. It's just kind of just following up like the whole thing right round. How is that possible in a case that someone to actually not manning the camera there all the time, of course, but just to have it swapping over at times?
Similar to when people do pinhole cameras, they bolt them to the side of a building. It's just how you plan ahead. Sometimes I get a 10-minute exposure wrong. What do you do if you get a 10-year exposure wrong? Start again.
I wouldn't want to know.
It's overexposed. All right, start again.
Yeah, it's a cracking shot. Wow. Infrared? Yes, infrared.
Yeah. So this is a Marmite subject. Who likes infrared?
Me.
Yeah, I
do, but not false colour. Just putting it out there.
Doug?
Yes, I don't mind infrared. It's not something I've dabbled with, but I don't mind the pictures.
Okay. And Steve, you in favour or a thumbs down?
I love it. To be honest with you, I love any type of photography, and it's just what I like about it is you can go out I don't know, on a blue sky day and create something totally different and use that artistic skill and see something different and things like that. So I love all types of photography. I like the digital art stuff as well. I really like the digital art stuff. So I would have a go at anything, but I do love this. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah,
It's really
yeah,
good.
I do like it too.
I mean,
There's a contrast in it as well. It's beautiful.
yeah, you've hit the nail on the head. That's exactly why I converted my old camera. I thought, okay, I could sell it, but I've heard about this infrared. So I started off, probably made my life a lot more difficult than it needed to be. I first experimented with infrared film just to see if I liked it and could do it. But actually, that's the most difficult path of entry into infrared because you have to use filters and then you obviously have to develop the film. And I found out that infrared film and lenses don't focus on the same plane because they have to recalibrate. When you send your camera off to have it converted, if you don't already know this, they recalibrate your focusing because infrared focuses on a different plane to visible light. So all of my infrared film was out of focus. So it's an expensive mistake. And then I quickly moved on to digital infrared, which I've made quite a few videos about this, but if you're not familiar with it, you can put an infrared filter on the front of your digital camera. But Louise got experience, not all cameras. Some cameras have an infrared blocking layer on the sensor, so it doesn't work. But essentially, you put an infrared filter on the front of your camera, and it blocks visible light, but just lets a certain spectrum through. The only problem with not converting your camera is you're limited to long exposures. That's it. You have no choice to go handheld, which is the best part of infrared. You can just leave the tripod when you think, oh, this is the most hideously sunny day, not a day for photography. That's when infrared comes into its own. So I think anybody that wants to get into infrared, just bypass all of the filters and everything, get a converted camera, whether you buy a converted camera already or you have one that you were thinking of upgrading, and just go handheld. Enjoy the freedom of being able to photograph all day, especially in the summer. That's my advice.
Yeah, especially exactly because we pretty much not lack ideas, but we kind of lose a little bit of inspiration in July, August. Everything's green and everything's kind of the same, blue skies, etc. So yeah, it's a perfect time to get out with an infrared camera.
Yeah,
I like it because it's pushing a different skill as well, isn't it? It's just pushing a different skill set. And like say, for me, I could photograph 24/7 all the time. I have to rein myself back. And these summer months are the hardest months to photograph. You've either got to get stupid early to get the sunrise, stop stupid late for sunsets. Where this is just another thing you can do and enjoy photography, and it just gives you another string to your bow. So it's I love this. I love any type of art, to be honest with you.
I mean, one of the things we've kind of noticed in this channel as well, and well said there, Steve. I mean, we had ICM photographers in this channel before, and it's like ICM. It's like there's a time and place you can do that, and if you lack inspiration, it's something you can gravitate to at a certain time of the year, etc., or just try something different. And it's that art aspect of the photography part. But yeah, I'll actually use the Lightroom version of infrared. If you know that version, just the filter you got in. But I've never actually shot from an infrared camera, nor have I actually had a filter from my camera. But yeah, I'd like to get more into that. Yeah, definitely.
There are definitely subjects that work better than others. So there are a few components I normally add. So without geeking out, because Louise will sing the jingle at me, there's something called chlorophyll in trees, and the more chlorophyll it's got in it, the more it glows. I haven't quite figured out which species of trees, whether they're evergreen. I just take the photograph and see what happens. But in a video that I made last year, I did an experiment with the audience, and I had two trees next to one another, and one of them was bright green and the other one was dark green. And I said, I'm going to take an infrared photograph. What do you think is going to happen? And one of them didn't glow at all, and then the other one did. It's almost as if the other tree wasn't there. So you can't look at a tree and know that's going to glow bright white in infrared. But
Yes.
there are normally components that I add to an image. So I know that most trees will glow white. This has got lots of cloud in this image, but if that was a blue sky and the sun is to my left or behind me, that will go dark black. If the sun's behind you, the sky in front of you will go dark black. Water goes dark black. You've immediately got contrast in the scene. But if you had lots of grass in the foreground, that's not going to work well for infrared because it's just going to look like a very boring. It will look like a tarmac road in front of a scene. It just doesn't work. So you've just got to get your head around. You've got to kind of learn to see in infrared. Oh, this is going to work. This is not going to work. So you're looking for contrast. And the thing about infrared, the sunnier the better. It's the opposite to what we know about photography. You think, oh no, the highlights are going to clip, you're going to lose your shadows. I would say that the dynamic range on an infrared camera is twice that of a normal camera. I take a photograph in a horrendously backlit bright scene like this, and I look at the histogram, and I've got, it's using half the histogram. So when you bring this into Lightroom, you have to bring the white points down and the shadows up to get any sort of contrast, because it's just incredible the amount of dynamic range it can capture. But that's because it's not visible light. It's dealing with something different.
Of course, one thing we've not talked about is the composition, because you've got like this frame beautifully with the sky, the tree, the branches coming down all around. So it's kind of framing away from the top of the sky there, and the tree in the middle, of course, which is right bang on, as you know, that your eyes are just drawn to it. So it's like you're just kind of focusing straight onto the middle of the picture in this image, and then your eyes just explore a bit more, of course. But yeah. And how many people will actually say to you, or any photographer does, of course, infrared is that a snowy tree? I've had people say that before.
Yeah. I actually call. Do you mind me telling this? Yeah,
you can try it because it's. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So Louise and I have been to this same location far too many times on the South Downs.
It's the one with the tree. You remember the hills, chaps, and the windmill in the background?
Yeah.
That one.
So I sent Louise an image which was an infrared, and she said, "Oh, next time it snows, we definitely have to go there." And I just said, "Oh, Louise, you know that I've got an infrared camera. It's an infrared photograph." And then she sent an emoji back, embarrassed emoji, whatever it was. But yeah, it does trick a lot of people. And I offered to send some of these images to Wakehurst Place, which is where this was taken. And they said, "Oh, we can't possibly use these because it's misleading. People will think it's a snowy scene, and it's not." So they didn't say, "Oh, we don't like them," but they said, "We're a national trust. We can't. This is misleading. We can't use
purists. They're purists. They don't want. Yeah, that's like that's the line they're going down. Well, it's a beautiful image. Thank you. These are some great images you've given us, Ben, tonight, and we've thoroughly enjoyed them. And I'm sure the viewers have enjoyed looking at them too. And we'll put some links, of course, guys, below this video with regard to these images, or regards to Ben's work, rather. That is images just now, so we're back on screen again. Just going to get rid of all this kind of thing here. Yeah, we're still recording, of course. Good. So, thanks. I'm sure you enjoyed these images, guys, as much as we've had. We've witnessed some cracking images tonight. And sure, if you do go over to Ben's work, he has got a website which you can look at, which we'll put on the screen just now, which will... Right, sorry. Yeah, so we'll put that's Ben's website, and do check him out. Of course, he also does workshops, as he's mentioned, 1-to-1 workshops. But of course, look at his images. Stay well, take a look around, you'll enjoy them. So, guys, what shall we talk about before we go? We've got maybe, say 5 minutes, we'll call it. How's that?
Bet it isn't.
Silence.
Let's stick to 5 minutes, Ben.
We shall. Yes, we will. We'll try to keep as short as possible. We do say an hour to everyone, but we just could do that to get them in the door. But anyway, the way I time I edit this will be probably down to about an hour and 15 minutes, so we'll be fine. So, Ben, just to go on to the point about your work. Now, of course, we can find you on Instagram, and we can find you, of course, on your website, as well as YouTube. Now, regards to your YouTube itself, I mean, the the days you go out on YouTube, what days did you actually put your videos out? Is it every second week or?
That's it. Yeah, every other week. I tend to stick to Sunday evenings at 7 o'clock. I like to think that I'm not chasing people with short attention spans. My videos are not long, but I'd like to think I'm finding an audience that know that my video is coming. They think Sunday night I'm going to chill out. I'm going to watch some of Ben's videos, and I like to think that we'll follow different landscape photographers. Some of them have YouTube channels. Some of them are a bit more lively. Some of them are comedians, characters, and I'd like to think I'm somewhere kind of in the middle. I can be entertaining, but it's difficult being so entertaining on your own because you are on your own in the woods talking to a camera. I don't know how funny you can be on your own.
Yeah.
So I I make a video every 2 weeks and put them up on Sunday evening, and I like to think that people can just just chill out and enjoy 10-15 minutes of my videos, taking them to a different place. I try to mix up the videos. Some of them will be teaching people a new skill, sharing a location. Mainly I make videos for other photographers, helping them out if they are going to go to this location, where they should park, where they should go, what season they should go to. Similar to Steve made a video about Osea. I had been there, and I just sometimes I get lucky. I just turned up on a freakily high tide when I went to Osea and didn't think anything of it. But then if you've been there, you realise the whole thing is based around the tides there. I just got lucky when I was returning from home one day. So I'm making videos for other landscape photographers, and hopefully if I'm going to go to a new location, somebody else would have done the same for me. We can all just share the knowledge, make our lives a bit easier, especially if locations are constantly being updated or changing. There's a famous one in it's not Hunstanton. There's a place in Norfolk, Caister-on-Sea. It's in a book, and there are some photographs of this zigzag cedar fence. But the storms came in, and they just completely wiped out the cedar fence. So there's nothing to photograph there. So if you were to find a new YouTube video, which they don't fall out of date in the same way that a book does that's published, I'd like to think that there are other people out there doing the same sort of thing. We can all just save each other some time.
Yeah, there's that.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. Do you think your YouTube sort of affects your photography, or do you think it helps your photography? Does it get in the way of your photography?
It's a good question. I think sometimes it's distracting me away from the photography, because when I make a YouTube video, I'm not just documenting me going to a location. So the Osea video that I made with Louise, I made it about another topic, not just about that location. So that was about gambling. The weather prediction was not good at all, and it was a long journey for us as well. But that video was about just roll the dice, go, and it paid off because the weather prediction was completely wrong, and it worked out in our favor. So because sometimes you can't make a video that people will click on and watch if it's just thinking about my next video coming up, Beachy Head. Sometimes you've got to make the video about, I think I've titled it, "This is the last time I'm going there." Something with a bit more intrigue, because somebody who's not interested in going to Beachy Head, or they live too far away, may not watch that video. So I'm always thinking about, I've got to make a video that is engaging for somebody who may not be interested in this location, trying to add extra value. So when I'm on location, I'm thinking about the topic of the video as well as taking some photographs.
Yeah.
So
do you put a lot of planning into the video, or do you just let it happen?
Taking the video that I'm currently working on, the Bluebell video, I've got some bullet points of things that I was going to talk about. I never script my landscape videos. When I make a tutorial, some of them will be scripted so that I don't miss anything fundamental. Otherwise, it's just bullet points to keep myself on track, to make sure I don't forget anything. But yeah, it's just a bullet list to keep me on track, really. But yeah, it's a good question. I'd say making a video distracts me. Sometimes I'll prioritize the video. If there's epic conditions happening, sometimes I will film it rather than take a photograph of it, which is not good. And then other times, I think I need to get the photograph. The video is just going to suffer for it. But
I
sometimes,
think Thomas Heaton hit on that, didn't he? In one of his videos, where he either goes out to photograph or he goes out to make a video. He separates the two completely, which I think is a good way of actually doing it. To be honest, so one doesn't distract the other.
Yeah, and the benefit of and this isn't me pitching the idea that anybody should start a YouTube channel. There are plenty of people out there. Although I did totally convince Louise to start a YouTube channel.
Bullet me, boys.
I said you're the one person that is traveling so much and going to beautiful places, and I'm seeing your photographs, but I'm not seeing the story. You should definitely start a YouTube channel. But my point was going to be, sometimes I don't get good photographs, but I can still make a good video because there's a lesson to be learned, or there might be something about something that doesn't result in great photographs, but you can still make a good video. So I feel like I've still created something, even if I walk away. When I was just a photographer without the video, I would probably leave a location feeling a bit disappointed, thinking, well, that didn't pan out, grey clouds. But if I come away and I've made a good video, I feel like I'm creatively fulfilled because I still made a video.
Well, that's the reality of photography, though, isn't it? You don't, you're not going out every time and getting the image that you want. It's about putting that effort in to go back and back and back and back.
Yeah.
Going back to the bluebells, I've been shooting bluebells for probably 10 years, and I still haven't got one image that I like. And I'm still going back, and I'm going back, and I'm going back.
Steve, you have no idea how pleased I am you said that.
They're so difficult to photograph. So difficult.
Oh, good.
It's her kryptonite. It's Louise's kryptonite. She can photograph poppies, sunfields, wild garlic, bluebells. It's almost like she forgets everything. Like, what do I do? Help!
Everyone else can be going, oh, they're marvellous conditions, as they were this morning. I'm like this, click, really? Click, okay. And I've got rubbish, man. So we're doing it again tomorrow at 4:30.
Yeah, start all over again.
Exactly. I'm heading to a place that's notorious for bluebells in Dalkeith Country Park. Doug will know it. So I'm going there tomorrow morning, and hopefully I do come back a couple of shots. But I can categorically say I've never had a shot that, I don't know if you guys watch Tom Peters, but he's back some cracking shots of bluebells. Say if you see some of these videos back in May last year, there's one video he's done, and sublime, cracking low line light going across the bluebells into this forest, this busy forest even. That's the kind of thing I'm looking to get that kind of mindset.
But it relies, Paul, so much on conditions.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, the conditions tomorrow morning are supposed to be a bit bleak, but there's going to be sun in mid-morning, and the problem with that is
1 minute you can look at a scene with your eyes, and then just plonk your camera. Not that we plonk, but you can get so many different scenes, even with the camera in one position, because of the light, and it can absolutely transform it from absolutely nothing to bonkers. As in, I'm saying bonkers contrast, and either one you can't work with. So you almost need something in between, and then a little bit of magic unicorns and rainbows and all of that wallop. And if you don't get the unicorns, rainbows, fog, a mist, whatever it is, and the little light rays coming through, you just think, But when Harvey does a flipping unicorn photograph,
I've never had the atmosphere with the lights. I've never had everything come together in one. Never ever had it. And I'm surrounded by bluebells.
You've actually got your camera set up and you're shooting a couple of shots, and then the light comes at that specific point. You got to shoot quickly. You're keeping rattling off your camera a few shots. You get it, and then you're wanting it to go back because you've not got nailed it what you want. You're a bit off in your composition, and then it doesn't come back again. So yeah, you're right. Especially with bluebell shots with the light you're looking to get. Yeah.
When I nail this shot, I'm never ever going to shoot another blue belt again.
Well, maybe I should
You say that now. You say that now.
Yeah,
every year.
it's okay. The addiction to get out again, I suppose, if you bag a cracking shot, which I'm sure you will. Guys, we'll probably much laugh up there. We've enjoyed it tonight. It's been really good. Ben, would you like to come back sometime back onto the podcast?
Yeah, I'd love to. I have to think of something else to say. Yeah.
Another half of us images. You can talk about them. It's not a problem.
Thanks, guys, for watching another Landscape Lenscast podcast. I'm sure you enjoyed this evening's images, and as well as I have, and of course the rest of the panels enjoyed them. And we'll be back again next week with another guest, with ourselves, Louise, Paul, myself, of course, Doug, and possibly Darren, and of course Alistair will make it, and of course hopefully Steve will be there as well. So until then, have a good photography week, and as I say in Scotland, cheery bye.